saying goodbye is one of the hardest things to do in life, and the show might still go on. I'm not sure if it's going to be with us, or with someone else, or if I too need a break from things for a while, but it's not the end. For all that we've done together over all of these months, albeit years, you can re-listen or hear for the first time. Maybe you're hearing this years after we recorded it, and then we're still together and you're wondering what the fuck I'm talking about. But it all has to start somewhere too. And whereas we started at cinema with High Noon, we're gonna end it, at least for right now, with Eraserhead. An undoing of the past. A new start for the future. It's a nightmare, one that came to life, or at least brought David Lynch's career to life. Back when he was at AFI and he was making short films and no one knew who he was except his close peers and yes, maybe Sissy Spacek, but hey, that's Hollywood. He already knew what he wanted to show audiences. He already knew what we needed to see. That the things that we never wanted to know would be the things that we'd come to dread. That it's all around us all the time. And I could keep talking and talking, or you can listen to both of us talk, because Dollar Reviews, and more importantly, Debt to Cinema, isn't about what I have to say, but what Steve and I had to say together. And so you can cut that up and mix it together, and maybe these chickens taste just like the real thing. But you should let me know, or you should let us know, because we're not going anywhere. We'll always be there, especially for each other.
I just cut them up like regular chickens. Sure, just cut them up like regular chickens.
What the fuck is this?
It is like, a nightmare.
It's more than a nightmare. It's like, you know, I'm no stranger to David Lynch. I think his first film that I saw was Elephant Man.
Yeah, same here. Like, worst way to set the bar too, because I was thinking, oh, you know, David Lynch. I kind of like this guy. I loved Elephant Man. I watched Blue Velvet. I didn't know how to react necessarily when I first saw it. I watched Mulholland Drive, and I think this is definitely not my thing. In fact, I thought it was kind of fucking stupid, but I was not at a point when I saw those where I necessarily got the concept of an art film yet. You know, whereas Elephant Man is just designed to kind of make you cry, and you know, just
a Mel Brooks movie, just like The Fly, mind you. But I mean, I've seen those as well, but I've even surpassed that, because one of the major things I did post graduation was catch up, you know, obviously on a lot of movies, but truly on a lot of TV. And one of the things that I forced myself to watch before its resurgence was even announced was watch my Twin Peaks like gold box set. I watched both seasons. I didn't like quote unquote binge them, like it took a week or two, but then I tracked down the DVD also for Fire Walk With Me before that became a Criterion selection, and watched that. So I was like so in that fucking world. Like I own like the Funko vinyl figures and shit. I got Cooper, and then who else I got? Oh, I got the Log Lady. So I was, like really into it, you know, like why isn't this guy making more movies? Like what's going on? You know, I didn't go and watch Dune yet. I didn't see The Straight Story, or, you know,
Lost
this.
Highway.
Like I didn't. Yeah, Lost Highway, which I'm gonna watch probably soon, because it's Bill Pullman, and I know that one is like his true noir film, like more so than Mulholland Drive, because, you know, that thing's such a fucking mind fuck. But this is close to it. I mean, I tried to watch this. I think it was Halloween 2 years ago when I was doing my Halloween thing that year. I want to say it was 2015. I fell asleep, and I almost actually fell asleep on it again tonight. And for like pretty much the same reasons I almost slept through Nosferatu. And it's that this is shot in black and white. There's not a lot going on. The first 10 minutes are completely, you know, maybe there's audio, but it's silent.
It's very unnerving too when watching it. But yeah, no, I mean, I can see what you're saying, and you know, it's a bummer. Like, this is not exactly accessible. You know, it is an art film.
It's not supposed to be, though. Yeah, it's more than just an art film. It's a midnight movie,
and it played that way.
This came out in 1977. This is before a lot of shit. Like this movie is so old that Stanley Kubrick used it as inspiration on the set of The Shining to get his cast and crew into the mood of that film.
Yeah.
That's how old this movie is.
These are
like
Jack
David
Torrance's
Lynch,
dreams. That's pretty much what I'm getting out of that.
just the idea that this is completely funded pretty much by the AFI and that this was shot on their property and it took 5 years to film and produce. Like, David Lynch actually slept in the main set here. He slept in Henry's bed. That's weird. Like, I know
That's
Lynch is a weird guy. Yeah. Like, he's a true auteur. Like, he's into transcendental meditation, and he's like a vegan. He has like meditative albums, and you know he writes poetry. And
looking up David Lynch quotes on the internet is fun because he'll say a lot of really weird, crazy shit. But I mean, come on, this is like there's so many different ways that he got financing for this. I mean, you know, this is truly, it is independent, and he's really just he's going for it, and you know, he's just committed to it. I mean, that's just something
Sissy
that you got to
Spacek
respect the hell out of.
Giving money to this movie's production.
Yeah.
Like the star of Carrie. This is only a couple years after Carrie, too.
I mean, it's like he was really connected with a lot of these new Hollywood filmmakers, but I mean, yeah, he got a lot of support.
I don't even think
through
that's
some
true.
Of these people.
I think those directors and those filmmakers were trying to get connected to him. Like, these are people that were seeking him out. Because he'd only been in L.A. when this film was released for, like, 7 years. Like, he moved from Philadelphia.
There's people that were trying to help, like, get this movie seen. I
for
saw
sure, yeah.
a tidbit on I'm assuming you looked at the same trivia page. Like, Terrence Malick tried to get financiers to watch what was unfinished of the movie, and evidently they couldn't sit through it. So... he got funding through AFI. He must have been for that circle of filmmakers. You know, I'm sure like they knew each other for the most part.
But he was in the AFI. Like, this was a project that they wanted to be done. Like, I wish that David Lynch wasn't so tight-mouthed about this film and its concept, its meaning. You know, how the prop work was done. All these things, like, it's the only one that he really, really, really doesn't talk about. You know,
even though there's an hour and 20-minute bonus feature on the DVD where it's just him talking about it.
Oh, I don't know. Maybe I don't have that DVD. I have
that's the one I got the
bootleg copy of the Universal printing, I think from 2001. And I did, in fact, because I know I just mentioned it before recording, I don't have my flat screen TV right now. I don't have anything with an HDMI hookup. I watched it using my DVD VCR combo on my CRT. I watched this in its native 4:3 format on a screen that is actually that size. So watching it in the dark just a couple of days before Halloween at night, most of the film is very stark and nightmarish. Like the lighting, like I can't, even though I wanted to pick Bela Lugosi's Dracula, which would have been also very similar in terms of its atmosphere and its cinematography. But this follows my pick of Nosferatu like so much better in terms of just this, not dread that you feel, but uneasiness.
Exactly.
Like, it just, what's real, what isn't? Did this actually happen? Is this the dream, or is that the dream? Like, just the way this
starts. It's all a
like,
nightmare. Like, I think there's a nightmare within a nightmare, but I mean, just the way that dream logic works, because there's things here that just don't make sense, like, at all.
But you have the girl singing in heaven, like, probably the best part of the movie. Like, that's a really jolly moment, like reminiscent of some of the stuff, not only in Mulholland Drive when you have that operatic sequence, but more so like in Blue Velvet when things are cheerful and happy, or like in Twin Peaks when this town is magical, and then you're like, oh wait, it's actually really fucked up. Like, there's some real bad things going on. Like, David Lynch, I think his main theme throughout his work is like this undercurrent of dread that is there always. Like, it doesn't matter how serene or magical an environment or surrounding is, there's always going to be that little just, wow, things are fucked upness going on. And just, you know, he'd made like 3 or 4 different short films. He actually, this production, you know, being 5 years, he produced and put out a different short while this one was being made. To go from working like in a print shop, making like just illustrations, to having this be your first feature film, like shits on people like. I still haven't seen Get Out, but I have to imagine in terms of vision, yeah, this shits on Jordan Peele and definitely what's his name, Mitchell, that did It Follows. Like all of these people today that are making these horror films over the last couple of years, where it's like, well, there's been so much out there for so many years that they're kind of stealing from.
They're influenced by something, and so is David Lynch to some degree. But it's also, this is new, like It definitely feels like a silent film that, or just takes from some surreal
German expressionist film,
or just surrealism.
But even body horror. I mean, Cronenberg was making films when this was being produced. Like he was in Canada, but he was making shit. Like
but I mean, this is still like I mean, Jordan Peele. Like I mean, that's Polanski definitely has an influence on that. But yeah, no, this is just completely different, and I think in a weird way, like I think it can be accessible if you really open yourself to it, because there is, at least for me, like I think the meaning is somewhat clear here.
I disagree. I think it's one of those films where everyone is going to have a different experience. And
I think they're going to have a different experience and take different things from it. But I think it's, I think that you can at least take what happens on the surface at face value and understand the basics of what's going on.
What surface? Like it's like you said, there's a dream within a dream or a nightmare within a nightmare. Maybe this whole thing is a nightmare and it's multi-layered. Like the film is called Eraserhead.
I think it is ultimately a nightmare, but yeah, it is about a guy.
There's a sequence in this film where they literally take his head and make erasers out of it.
Well, here's what I think that this is basically. This is why I think it's a nightmare, is because you have Henry, who is the lead in this, and why it's his nightmare. Like, okay, I mean, let me go step by step here. Like, literally the first shot, it's of his head floating, right? And then we're kind of going into like this little rock or asteroid, like this moon-shaped thing, this little ball. Yeah, it's like we're going literally down the rabbit hole. There's this close-up of a hole, and we go in it. And I think it's literally, we're just going inside Henry's mind, and we're going into his nightmare. And in some nightmares, when you have them, like, as well as like when you follow dream logic, like, I mean, when he's like kind of, by the way, just his head's kind of floating, I think he might be like asleep there. I don't know how to put it. I feel like I sound incoherent here when I'm talking about it. But anyway, so we're going into the dream, right? And then, he's going to this girl's parents' house that, he's not sure why he's invited, doesn't know necessarily what's going on. So much weird stuff is happening that just doesn't make sense. You see the girl's mom, like, she takes this bowl of salad and mixes it by bringing it to, I assume, the grandmother's hands, and uses her hands to do it. Like, these actions that don't make sense. You get weird stuff like the chicken. And then, of course, it follows on with the plot of the news of like, okay, you know what, you screwed my daughter, and now you're going to have to be a father, and there was this baby that was born, and it's messed up. But
no, what you're talking about is what happens.
I'm trying to use both. Here's how.
How's it clear cut and on the surface, and anyone can read it? Like
here's
like,
how
these things happen.
It's a tough thing to pin down in like 5 sentences, I guess. But that's the setup, right? And where Henry is in all this is he's very, very passive, doesn't really talk, just kind of goes around. And all this shit is being thrown at him. Now, I don't know about you, but in nightmares for me, like, stuff kind of just happens around you, and you're sort of helpless to do anything about it. And that's how this kind of keeps going, is that then ultimately you get this weird kid. Like, I mean, sometimes I see really weird shit in my nightmares of, like, things that just can't possibly exist. You look at that kid, like, they use the explanation of, okay, it's deformed. So I guess maybe that helps make it sense to an audience. But, like, I mean, yeah, that baby is just messed up, and he's kind of looking at it like an actual kid. Then there's just there's a long list of things that I could go down, but the basic thing I guess I could get is that this is a nightmare of someone who's got to feel like he's probably got a lot of pressure on him, probably in his real life might have something like this going on. David Lynch, even supposedly this is his most personal film, and probably had some anxieties of his daughter trying to raise her, or of what the future may have been, or just worrying that maybe his wife or partner was going to leave him, which he married multiple times. So I don't know exactly where that's coming from, but I think also part of that nightmare is that there is that moment where he loses his head, and it's taken to this guy, like the fitting titular moment of like taking pieces of his brain and putting him on erasers and just literally, like, you know, when you use an eraser, it, how do I put it? It's not like it dissolves, but when you rub it against a piece of paper, you know, like it serves its purpose and it just kind of withers away, right? And that's like, I guess that's part of the nightmare too, is that this guy's very passive and he's losing his mind. Literally, like, his mind, his identity is being taken away from him and just scraped on the surface of a piece of paper, and then just withers away. You know, like, there's this is a first viewing. I'm sure there's like so many pieces that are written about this that are far more eloquent than anything I could say, but that really is just the basic thing that I got out of this, is that this is a guy who's pretty much is afraid of that he's losing control, and then ultimately when you get to the end, he loses it and does something about it.
I don't think it's a nightmare at all. I don't think it's a dream. I think there are dreams that happen here, but they're heavenly, literally. Like, the only dreams that happen are on a stage. Anytime he's on that stage with the radiator lady, like, he's looking at his radiator, he looks at how shitty his apartment is. It's all drab and bleak and horrible. And he is transported to this stage, a black and white tiled floor with a red curtain, I would assume, a red velvet curtain. And he's sitting there watching this girl with, you know, who might also be deformed, like his baby or his child. Or
well, I see that as sort of like, it's more like the daydream within the nightmare, where he's literally looking at his heater.
I don't think it's a nightmare.
This is how I see it.
He might be living a nightmare, but it's not an actual nightmare. Like, he is conscious of what's going on. Like, you have so many things going on that make you question what's real and what isn't, just like Lynch's other works. Like, that's probably his main penchant. It's like I said, you know, you want to believe that the good stuff is reality and then the undercurrent is the nightmare, but maybe the undercurrent is reality and then the good stuff is a dream. Like I said, you get this stage here and this performer who has these cheeks, these deformed cheeks, these tumorous cheeks, who has this wonderful voice, who's singing about being in heaven, who is making him feel happy. And yet at the same time, you have these weird snake things that I'm going to imagine are sperm, because that's
something
exactly
like
what
it.
they
They're
look
definitely,
like.
There's no doubt that they're designed that way for a very specific reason.
You have them showing up, like falling from the sky and her stepping on them. You have him in bed with his neighbor after they just fucked, and he's like finding them in bed and throwing them at the wall.
But see, there's never one scene that ever registers as reality. You know, when he's in his apartment, there's weird shit like plants and things, or in the hallway there's that one woman that he's attracted to, that, you know, she then all of a sudden goes off with this weird looking lover. You go to the parents' house and there's these really weird little chickens that are there, that are just oozing out. Yeah, I mean, there's just no reality to it, like that, them oozing that out like that. And of course there's the baby itself, which in no way resembles like reality. Like, I think this is 100% a consistent nightmare. Like, even when you're talking about the radiator, that's why I think it's kind of a daydream, or his daydream within it, is because he's looking, you know, what do heaters do? You know, they provide warmth and comfort when it's freaking cold out, and you got this harsh, cruel world, and he's looking at, you know, this thing that's comforting, and he's sleeping there. And I think that fantasy there is kind of an abstraction of that, where he's getting comfort from this thought of this woman on stage. And, you know, even if it, I don't know, I guess that a side effect of it being a nightmare is that I guess he just sees her in a weird way, you know. But like, you can't.
This might be surrealist, but at the same time, it has like a truth to it that most quote unquote realistic films don't hold, and that there is a palpable sense of fear here, that you can understand how scary it would be, not just for David Lynch, who was this age at the time, but our protagonist, our Eraserhead, our Henry, who, unbeknownst to him, has impregnated someone, not just with his seed, but with, like, a worm. He gave her a worm, and a worm came out, like, pretty much. Like I said, like, the opening isn't a hole. It's not a moon. Like, even though there's a person who's billed as the man in the moon, I see it as like an egg, like an ovum. You have all these sperm all the time. You have this hole. You have it like zooming in. Like, that vision is the actual action of him, you know, reproducing. Like, that is what caused this spike to happen. Like, he kind of just fell into it in the way when he's walking across the courtyard and he steps in the pothole, and then what's he do next? He goes home, he takes his shoe off, he takes his sock, his wet sock, he puts on his radiator, and he just tries to, hope that everything goes away. And that's what he does throughout the film. Like, the way that it kind of ends when he cuts his son or daughter or whatever in half. And it shits out oatmeal, baby food.
I don't know.
Chicken livers. I mean, I don't know, something.
I think I want to retract a little bit. Like, the way I want to put it best is I don't want to say like we can agree on what the movie is exactly, but I think more so we can kind of just agree what happens to Henry and what he's going through.
Henry is like the quintessential pushover. He wears a pocket protector. He has like 7 pens. His whole
That's the thing. He's very helpless.
The entirety of the screen time, or story time, or both, he's on quote unquote vacation. That's what he says. I'm on vacation, and his vacation is hell. Like, what's he do? It's like you said. Like, he goes to this girl's parents' house, and she herself abandons this kid also. Like, oh, that's even more nightmarish than being with the kid in the first place. And him fucking someone with the kid in the room.
He's just quiet and filled with anxiety the whole time. Like, he's very unsure of himself. Even when he goes to the house, he's like, well, I didn't know if you wanted me to come at all. I don't know what's going on. Like, every single decision is basically being made for him.
The little things here are almost as big as the big things. Like, the moment when the mother's confronting him in front of their, like, front door, and she starts kissing his neck, right? And how does he react to that? He just, like, gets squirmy and starts looking around the room, and then his girlfriend or her daughter, whoever she is, appears, and she doesn't even go, like, what the hell's going on, Mom? What are you doing? She's just like, it was premature. I'm not even sure it's a son. Like, it's
a nightmare.
It's
None of the actions make sense. Like, it just jumps into random shit. Like, it's really not just the fact that, like, dreams and Lynch are always brought up, but I mean, I think that's how his films have been best described for the most part, especially Mulholland Drive, where it's like, no, this is never reality.
That one's like 100% a dream, though. Like,
I think this is 100% a dream. It's just a very
dreams.
horrific dream.
I don't know. It's like there has to be some sense of reality here, because even though it doesn't seem like it's in the astral, or that it is in the astral plane, not in the earthly realm, and maybe it's just like the power of the filmmaker, because like you said, like, oh, maybe it was Lynch's daughter, maybe it was his wife, maybe he's had many wives. He already had a daughter when this film was made. Before
he might be channeling previous anxiety that he had.
Yeah, no, she was born with, like, apparently severely clubbed feet, and they had to, she had to go through many operations to be quote unquote normal. This is a director who resembles this protagonist. Like, he has lofty, weird hair. Like, just the character that he doesn't appear in many or almost any of his works, but he does have a role on Twin Peaks. He plays like an FBI agent, and he has hearing aids and he yells all the time. That's who he is, which is so weird, because as much as I know, he's like a very soft-spoken, almost zen-like being, where you meet him and you're like, wait, you're the one that makes these films and TV shows about, like, really fucked up things? Like, that's you.
Well, it's tough to make, like, I don't know much about the film, his personality or whatsoever, other than he's an interesting guy. But I mean, and I don't want to assume like what this means to him personally, but I think just reading up more on it, you do find that information, like, oh yeah, okay, his daughter had deformed feet. But as far as the deformed child, like, I did see it this way, where it's something where I'm sure people that are older and just have more life experience can say way more about this, probably take more on multiple viewings.
He was roughly our age though.
I mean for people that like just have grown up. Like, I've never had a kid, I've never had to deal with that, but like, just the idea of it being deformed like that and practically looking hideous, like, it's one of those things where, people usually, you expect them to say great things or about their kid, or like be like, oh, how beautiful does this baby look? But a lot of people that I know that have had kids, they've referred to, jokingly so for the most part, like, they refer to their kids as, little monster. And, that term has to exist because at times they have to be, like, just really freaked out that they have this baby
I
in
don't
front
think
of them,
so.
and it's
I mean,
got to be scary as hell to have them around. And they were, I mean, yeah, because you see,
my
I mean,
cat is
it's
on my
not
lap right
in
now.
no way is it cute here, and it's at its worst, and you see it
No,
when it's
exactly.
sick, and yeah,
My cat is on my lap right now.
Mm-hmm.
He's still a kitten. He's not even. He's barely half a year old, but he's a little monster. He's got my hand between his paws.
the responsibilities
He's kind
of
of
bringing up
he's,
a person
he's
are very
gnawing on my
different from bringing up a
wrist.
pet.
No, it's the same. He is a
It's
cute,
completely
adorable
different.
thing that I like to hug and pet and pamper.
Are you
and he
anxious
might be
about your
licking-
cat becoming a good cat and one day
No, not like
getting
that.
a
I'm saying
good job and
he's
meeting
licking
somebody?
my fingers.
See,
and
the
he's
anxiety is
playing
different.
with me, but he's also attacking me right now. He is biting my fingers. He is trying to bite the cables of my headset. Like, he is a monster. He knocks over water bottles. He jumps on window screens.
I'm just
He
saying the thought of
attacks
bringing
other
up a
animals.
pet and bringing up a person, it's completely different.
No, I mean in terms of the term like little monster, it's just creatures that you don't have full control over, especially when they're not adults. You know, like I said, he's a kid and he's still a baby, or I guess he would be like closer to adolescence right now, like almost a teenager. He doesn't understand everything yet, and like he might be a monster, but he has this sense of naivete that it's just like, well, what do you expect? And I think the fear here that is presented, the nightmare that is like unleashed on the cinematic world, is more just the fear that all humans have, or probably creatures, to be honest, and that our sole purpose in life, from creation to death, is to procreate. You know, it's to create more, to prolong the existence of humankind. And this idea, you know, like look at the whole like anti-vaccination trend that's so big now. That you're like, what if my kid does have autism or Asperger's or anything, you know, like outside of just a personality construct? Like, what if it's a physical deformity? What if they're colorblind? What if they're gay? What if they're this? And like, that's an anxiety that I don't really have yet, but I can imagine, you know, when you settle down, when you meet someone that you want to start a life with, when you want to start literal lives with, like this fear, what if what pops out isn't exactly what we wanted?
Well, see, and
What
that's
do we
basically
do?
what I'm saying, is that I get where you're going at with a pet, but also it's those other variables that just add more shit onto there with an actual
Oh yeah, because
person that are completely
when you create
different.
it, when you
Yeah.
actually procreate it, when you are, especially if it's not an accident. You know, in this film, it's more of a nightmare because this is his girlfriend. He's never met her family, and this is a shit world that he lives in, and he accidentally had a premature baby. Like, that's like the worst case scenario, and she abandons him. But if you're actually married, you know, like if it's something that you're trying to do, like how
Then
many
it's a
stories
far
have
more
you seen,
beautiful
especially
thing,
in
yeah.
movies, where people are trying and trying and trying to have kids, and it's like they have alarms on their phone for when ovulation is happening, and they have like thermometers and all these
Yep.
like fucking gadgets, and you're like, well, you know, all these people have unplanned pregnancies, how hard could it be, type thing. And it's like, yeah, you know, like they have tests now, like in utero, where they can determine if the baby is not exactly 100% good. And then you get the question of like, well, do we abort it? Do we just take what life gave us? Like, you know, get like the fucking Sarah Palin thing where it's like, my teenage daughter had a kid, and the kid, well, I forget what the kid had, but it was something. I think it might have been like autism. Like the baby had something, and she was a saint because she didn't abort it because she was so Christian, type thing. You know, like that's a part of life. Like it's just it's so fucked up to think about. Like our greatest purpose on this planet is literally to create more life, and this is just a horrific image of what that life could be like. Like, because by no stretch of the imagination is someone's child gonna look like this. Is it gonna be some...
No, this is a complete
and by the way,
abstraction of that.
we haven't even spoken about the prosthetic or the puppet or whatever the fuck
Oh,
you
it's
wanna
amazing.
call it.
It's
It's
amazing.
so good.
Yeah.
There's a reason why no one knows what it is, and it's because you don't have to know, because it looks real. It looks more real than any CG will ever look. Maybe that's because of the lighting. Maybe that's because of the sound. Maybe that's because of the way its eyes look. Like, I'm sure it's a fetus of some sort that they have like it's turned into a puppet.
It
but,
does help that it's also in one spot the whole time, and it just never leaves it, you know?
Yeah,
But
it never gets up and starts dancing like an alien. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, just yeah, it's probably sound too. I mean, like just real brief, but I mean, yeah, a large part of why this is unnerving, and I got the benefit of watching this on my headphones. I watched this at 5:30 this morning, by the way,
Yeah,
so
wrong time.
it was a unique experience. Because
Yeah,
when
I couldn't.
you watch,
I wanted to watch it with headphones, but like I said, I watched it on a CRT, and they didn't
Yeah.
exactly have aux out back then. So,
no.
well, some
No,
some
yeah,
sets
yeah.
did,
So
but
you
mine
really
doesn't.
missed that, but yeah, I mean, it's really quiet, but there's just this really unnerving, low pitched hum that
It's-
like it
it's
just gets
that
to you, you know.
Dark ambiance. This
Like, that's-
just, there's not
it-
music. There is
No.
music in the film, but it's just like the ambient tone
Yeah,
mixed
it's
with
just
the
very
baby
unfriendly.
crying and the squishes and the squirms, like the sound of the pencil factory, like the way his head
Just
looks.
that drill in general, like that drill really.
The
Ugh, man,
coagulation of the chicken blood,
Ugh,
the sound the
ugh.
baby makes when it dies, like these, like how, like I was reading a story about, I don't even know for where it is here, but they like put a mic inside a plastic bottle, and then they put that plastic bottle in a bathtub, and then they had it floating, and then they were recording something, and it, like something about room tone, like with the mic, and then he was playing with like playback and reverse, something that he does a lot in Twin Peaks, and like the weird red room there, which is exactly actually like the same exact set that I'm talking about here, where like there's a lady on the stage with the checkered black and white floor and the red curtain. That is in Twin Peaks. Like that is a real thing there, but more so because, you know, it's CBS and they got a lot of money. But it's like the vision here, like outside of how nightmarish it is, or like the body horror, or like the grotesque nature of like what your horrible child could be. It's the vision that someone with not much money could convince other people to allow him to make this film independently, without a studio, without a backer, like without like it predates big film festivals. Like, yeah, sure, you know, Cannes was already happening, but they didn't exactly do small nothing films like this. You know, this is before Sundance and Slam Dance and Austin City Limits or anything else. You know, like this is
Austin
the
City
reason.
Limits is music, so yeah.
Oh, excuse me, okay.
Just saying.
South by Southwest, okay.
Fantastic Fest or South by Southwest. Fantastic Fest this
anything.
would have played if that existed.
TIFF,
Yeah.
name it. Okay, any film festival you want to name. They didn't exist. This didn't exist. The internet didn't exist. You know, like there weren't people trying to crowdfund films on Kickstarter. Like this is way before that. This is like pretty much before anything. Like these films like these are the reason why all of that exists. That little people with nothing to prove make a film that connects with people for reasons unbeknownst to the filmmaker. Like that your vision is shared and they see what you saw. And then they want you to make more movies. That filmmakers like George Lucas and Kubrick and Terrence Malick and whomever else went, I really like you. Can I work with you? Do you want to make Return of the Jedi? Because that almost fucking happened. Is that he, you know, like I wonder what Dave. I still haven't seen the Twin Peaks Return or season 3 or whatever you want to call it. That has like 1 million stars in it and musical performances, etc. But I wonder when he's gonna make another film, if he's gonna make another film. Like given that like Screen and Sound or whoever it was, you know, picked fucking Mulholland Drive as the best movie of all time in the last year or two. Like, where is he now? He went from that being selected to doing Twin Peaks on Showtime. Like, what is he doing? He
He's
has
in
a
his
Twitter.
70s
He has
now,
social
you know?
media.
He can do whatever he wants. I'm sure he does like small stuff, like maybe shorts or something. Like
I don't think
Last
so.
I heard,
Like,
I
I
don't
think
know.
he strictly, like, he's done, like, some kind of music video stuff. He's done, like, art installation type things, like, visual portraits. Like, he's done things like that. I'm sure he has, you know, his home camera or whatever that he's making. But where is Jason Blum with his checkbook and his partners approaching a talent like him? You know, you got John Carpenter working with him on the new Halloween. You know, you got like these kinds of filmmakers trying to help these stalwarts of not just horror but, you know, film in general. And you have these masters, like true masters. Like the term auteur gets thrown around so much on the internet and just in in like movie centric conversations, like when you talk about, you know, a film by, it's so nauseating that it happens so much. But David Lynch is an actual author. You know, he wrote, directed, shot, produced, did the audio design. He did everything on this film. He made the sets. Like, he literally did everything. Like, the credits, it might as well be like, you know, a fucking Robert Rodriguez movie, the way the credits read like immediately when the thing's over.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that he made this, and then he has done much, like Twin Peaks changed television. You know, he's made films like Blue Velvet with people like Dennis Hopper that, you know, have kind of changed mainstream media. Like, look where Kyle MacLachlan's career went after that film. He was in fucking Showgirls. And yet, like, he's almost not even a real human. Like, he's like this, what's the term? He's like an apparition. He's a ghost. He is like this meditative guy, this peaceful guy.
It's like, is he even real? Is that one
like,
of those
truly, like,
yeah.
and yet he can bring us these nightmares on film or these dreams on film in a manner that seem even more real than they are when they're in our heads. Like, what I truly want to see from him, what I want him to do next, what I hope he's already doing and we just don't know about, virtual reality. I think he, if anyone else out there has the ability, can truly make something terrifying.
You are
like,
the biggest proponent of that, more so than other people I know.
Like, I might throw my thing away, I'm so scared type thing. That's what I'm hoping. I hope that he can... Because I think what he tries to use horror for, too, which is why he's just such a special person, is it's not to scare you, it's to scare you awake. Like, he's not trying to terrify you, he's trying to, like, not illustrate, but
it's more unnerve,
awaken
really,
you to illuminate, you know, the fear that you didn't think you had. Like that, the opening shot of Blue Velvet, where you see this white picket fence suburbanite, like, garden, all these houses with the perfect lawns, and you see this guy with his hose spraying it down, and you got the cheerful music, like it's straight out of fucking Pleasantville, and then it, like, fucking not pans down, but like dollies down through the crust, through the grass, through the dirt, through the topsoil, through the skeletons, through everything, and here's the fucking shit underneath that's under everything that you're not aware of. Here's these biker dudes that love PBR instead of Heineken that are just trying to fuck anything that moves that you don't want in your society, you know? Like, it's too much. This is more than a buy, it's more than a silver dollar. Like, this is one of those landmark films where, much in the way that Nosferatu for me was hard to swallow because of when it was made and how it is shown, and just that, you know, it's silent, and yet it's so terrifying. This is terrifying for a different reason, and it might be slow in a similar way, and it might be just as hard to ingest because, once again, it's in black and white, and it's slow, and not much happens, and even what happens, you're not sure what's going on. There's only 22 pages of a script here, and it was made over 5 years. Like, this production was almost as long as Mad Max Fury Road, and there's no CG. I don't know. It's like truly a landmark film. If this podcast is truly over, at least for us, between the Brian and Steve collaboration after 109 episodes, I'm happy that we began with one that I find very dear and a pinnacle of classical Hollywood filmmaking, and that we ended it with one right in the middle of New Hollywood that changed everything for everyone else.
I think we've had just a great run. I mean, just to get away from it, like a great run just as far as, I think, the more, like, the second half, I think, of this show, at least that I've been on, a lot more of my favorite stuff I've seen in the past year. But, yeah, this... I guess I said it, I don't know, with art films, I always feel like I sound like an asshole when I try to pin something down, and, you know, there's that thing where I think David Lynch or other people have just said, like, you know, just don't try to describe it, or, I don't know, like, you know, I don't like talking about it.
10 minutes trying to describe this one.
Well, yeah, and it's that's why it's like, I try, because I'm on a podcast, I'm talking about a movie, and I feel like I gotta try and share that, but I honestly, like, just... it's like if I'm talking about, a tree of life or something, I just don't want to talk about what that means to me. But I guess this is like, it is horror, but like in a different sense. This is horror that stayed with me, and that
horrifying.
horrifying, like it will horrifying and it's just unnerving. And I think, this is mostly, I think, horror from like the male perspective of, yeah, what happens if you are the guy that gets some woman knocked up and then you're left to take care of the child, and you think of all the things that could go wrong, of how they affect you and how the world could bring you down.
The romantic comedy version of this film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
like,
I mean, that's just one way to look at it. But I mean, hell, I'd even love a female perspective on this. Maybe at some point I'll have a conversation.
I'm sure we have it. I'm sure if you look for it, there is a female perspective.
Oh, I mean in
similar to
conversation, as far as like engaging in one, I could definitely find some written. You can find so many things on this that are far more eloquent than what I'm saying, because I have not read any of them. This is me talking just based on a first viewing.
Of a film, like the if Knocked Up was a romantic comedy version of this, like I'm sure there's a female, but fucking 4 months, 3 weeks, and 2 days is like not too far in terms of content.
For sure, but this it's a nightmare. It's surreal. It's unnerving. It's technically gorgeous. I mean, I don't know. I hate having to put a rating on it, but I think if I have to, I'd say silver dollar. And that just comes down to personal taste. But yeah, this is great. It really is.
The Eraserhead sequence and the way it ends after they erase that pencil mark and he sweeps the rubber off the desk, and then it like floats through the air as particulates, and it's like a seamless edit transition into his bedroom. And when you get that again, which just so happens to be on the cover of the DVD copy that I have, where you have Henry with his weird hair and you have that same kind of particles floating behind him, where it's like, how did you make black and white cinematography look that pretty without a color palette? How did you do that? Like, without hollow lenses.
Black and white can absolutely look beautiful, but I mean, the real answer to that probably is, hey, it took 5 years for them to do that.
But not to do that.
Probably took them like 6 months to get that shot.
Maybe, but I
don't
think
know.
this
They
took
really
5
took their
years
time.
just because, it was so ambitious. Like, the idea that there was a test screening where apparently the audio mix was so bad that it was like deafening, and then they cut 20 minutes out of it. Like, this is 85 minutes. I can't imagine a 90-minute, or not a 90-minute, like a 120-minute cut of this. Like, that would probably be like Madhouse territory. Like, if you lived in this world for another 20 or 30 minutes, like, yeah, you might go crazy. Like, it is one of those kinds of movies where you can only take so much of it.
I mean, it feels strange coming out of it, like, right when those credits start. I mean, especially just like how the strangeness of the opening image itself, of just Henry's head like floating in space like that. It's just, you really are not sure what you're in for, and you kind of just go along with it. There's just something about, just that low pitch hum in the sound where it's like, it's unnerving, but it's also, it's kind of inviting, like it's pulling you in. It's that like little door that, you shouldn't open, but you're just kind of curious to go into anyway. I don't know. Please stop me if I'm sounding stupid right now.
Like, we didn't talk about, I talked about Nosferatu a little bit, but like this shares similar territory to City of Lost Children. Like, just the way that's kind of, it's a dreadful, like, not a nightmare per se, but it's dreamlike. Whereas this is dreamlike in a completely different sense. Like, that's a child-filled adventure, or it might be a dystopia, but there's like hope. You got this strong man who's trying to save the day. You got these zany characters that are trying to make you laugh. Like it has a very interesting color palette, and like these greens and these reds, and it's almost like a Willy Wonka world, where this is just bleak, so industrialized, where it might quote unquote be a pretty movie in the way that it's shot from certain angles and certain images are iconic, or just the monochromatic like nature, and I don't think they shot this in black and white because they didn't have the money for color, but more so I think it's Arnheim. I forget which theorist said it, but the reason why they loved the original films, the silent era days, like the Nickelodeon days, were that films had this dream-like nature to them.
Yeah, black and white just is better at presenting complete unreality, I think, and just giving you that otherworldly vibe. Like,
even though these people are humans, and you can tell these are hands, and that's a car, and these are flowers, because you have to fill in the dots in your head in terms of what color is that actually. Like I said, that it's a black and white checkered floor with red velvet curtains. I can just assume based on the texture, the way the light bounces off of it. And yet that's me using what I know about the world, using what I know about David Lynch's filmography, given like what a stage has, what kind of drapes it might have. But I'm assuming in the same way that when you have a dream, even if you don't remember it, and they say when you dream, it only is like 10 seconds that it actually takes place in the real world right before you wake up. And that's why you always forget the dream, like 10 seconds after you wake up, because it's just a split second of your unconscious mind when you're like past REM mode, and it's just like a brain dump. Any anxiety you have or worries or whatever are just there for an instant, and then as soon as they're there, they're gone. And this movie, this nightmare, this vision isn't that. This is permanent. Anyone can watch this for almost an hour and a half. And not only can you watch it, but you can feel these same things. You can be just as uneasy. You can have just as many lack of answers or too many questions, that it makes you wonder, like, what am I also afraid of? Like, I don't think there's a person out there in the same way that Nosferatu works, where you can't be awake and alive and watch either of these two films and not at least feel sick in your stomach, or squeamish, or want to look away, or check your phone on purpose, or maybe pause it to watch it in a couple more hours, or invite someone to watch it with you. Thanks for listening. We hope it's been a pleasure.
If you enjoyed this episode, you can listen to more by checking out the Dollar Review Show, where we cover theatrical and streaming releases, as well as give our 2 cents on anything we sought out on our own, whether that be TV, music, etc.
You can find all of our content at dollarreviews.net. Follow us on Twitter, or like us on Facebook at Dollar Reviews.
And we're also on Google Play Music, iTunes, Pocket Cast, TuneIn, Stitcher, SoundCloud, YouTube, just about anywhere on the internet, with hours of content available to you for free.
If you listen somewhere we're currently not available, you'd like to contribute some talking points, send a Death to Cinema request, or if you just want to laugh at us, you can do so by reaching out to us on social media or send an email to brian@dollarreviews.net. You can follow me personally on Twitter at Brian Gillis, that's BRYONGILLIS, and now you know how to spell the email too, and also under the same name on the Loveview site Letterboxd, which acts as my film diary, where I rate films I'm watching, write the occasional review, and even sometimes compile lists.
This is Stephen Montmanex, signing off.
That's it for this week. Until next time, keep the change.
I just cut them up like regular chickens. Sure, just cut them up like regular chickens.